him, and he used to be the head cheese of this group, and he's since moved on to greater things like raising a family. So welcome, Alex. Good to see you. So off the bat, anybody have any additions, corrections to the previous minutes, December meeting minutes? None? Okay, that's good. So they will stand approved. The guest we have is Alex, and he's going to have a say in a minute. So the public comment, Alex, we'll just move you right down to your presentation. Okay, is that all right? Okay, very good. So why don't we just go around and check in, and I'll go by alphabetical order since Mary Kim's not here. Mike, anything for the good of the cause?
Happy New Year to everybody. Happy to say I'm 10 days into my first class on my master's program. That's going well.
Excellent.
And, well, welcome to Debbie. Glad you're here to join us. That's about it for me.
Okay. Great. Brenna.
Hi, everyone. For our new members, I'm the staff liaison for this group from the city of Milwaukee. I'm the city's emergency management coordinator. So happy to have you here with us. Let's see, any major...
I think you're with the city of West Linn now, actually.
Oh, I said Milwaukee. Oops. I'm so sorry. The city of West Linn.
I was waiting for her to correct that, but yeah.
Fail. Sorry. I'm sorry. That's hilarious. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness.
Right.
So aside from my official job actually being in West Linn now, yeah, I don't think there's been any major updates, except I do finally have some stuff to report on from our baseline audits. And in my staff liaison section, I will share, we have some exciting opportunity to be joined by members of PGE with this group for our next meeting. So just all good things I'm working on. So passing it along.
Yay, Brenna.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I'm pleased as punch that Brenna's with us, because she's already shown a great amount of get on the job and do it, and I'm really pleased to have her on board.
Oh, super.
Yeah. We do have another new member named Charity Hudnut. Her sister in Florida has gotten a Teacher of the Year award in Florida, so she's down there and can't be with us, but hopefully she'll be here next time. So Victoria, what's cooking?
I'm just super delighted to be here tonight, since I missed it last month. Don't know where that went. And I'm glad I'm here on time, and the electronics all work, and that's all good. And so glad for a sunny day, and I don't have anything else to add.
Great. Okay, well, I could say a lot, but I won't. But I did finish a great book. Some of you probably read it. It's a book by Peter Wollenben, The Hidden Life of Trees.
Yeah.
Incredible book. It was so good that we bought the illustrated version, and really, yeah, there you go. Brenna's got it. Okay. I knew you'd have it, Brenna. I just
That's
excellent book. Well, I tell you, just can't get enough of it. Okay, Greg, what's cooking? Oh, you're muted, Greg. You must be muted.
great. Greg already checked in. Oh, good, great. Okay.
Still muted. Greg, you're still muted. Anybody here, Greg? No.
I see the mute icon on the participants list. It looks like he's muted by the WebEx program.
Yeah, can you unmute him, Brenna?
I can't. I can only send a request to unmute. I can't do it here.
Uh,
Hold on, let me see if this works, and then maybe we all just need to unmute ourselves.
Okay, I think I got it.
there he is.
Some other screen came up that basically tried to get me to rejoin the meeting. So apologies. Who knows what happened? What I was going to say is that I've been trying to put together an article about neighborhood resilience teams, and looked at the some really wonderful material that Brenna had given me about efforts to do this kind of work in Oakland. And there's an organization, Redefining Progress, which I've known about for a number of years, seem to be really involved with that. But I also discovered some really interesting projects like up in Humboldt County. And then today I was remembering, the just a set of meetings that I went to in Littleton, New Zealand, back in 2014, with a remarkable woman named Margaret Jeffries, who had for a number of years been working on efforts to really kind of make that as resilient a community as possible, which had made a big difference after the 2011 earthquake. And so that was really kind of fascinating to look at. But I've been basically just trying to kind of organize my thinking for the April presentation, and writing a paper is oftentimes the best way for me to go about discovering what it is I want to say. So that's been fascinating to do, and really encouraging just to see how much good work is going on, including the work with the neighborhood emergency teams in Portland, which is really impressive as well.
Great. Glad to hear your thought on that, Greg, because I really appreciate your knowledge in that area, and we're going to tap into that later, I'm sure. Okay, Debbie, our new member. Anything like you would like to say to the crew?
Just wanted to say that I'm really excited about this opportunity to be able to participate and give input on issues of sustainability. And I also want to just thank all the members for all their tremendous work that they've been doing on this subject. Thank you.
Great. All right. Good to see everybody here. So we've got our sustainability education series is going quite well. I thought we had a really good session on the 11th. Mike, thanks for introducing Chris again.
Happy to
And
see some
by
of you.
my count, I counted 26 people, which I think is our greatest attendance so far, which was great. 7 people indicated how they heard about it, and the majority was on social media. So it'd be nice to get more input, but I think that was the bulk of it. Someone heard from the library, and I think someone else heard through the Master Gardener program. So segueing into that, first thing, we have got Alex. We need to reschedule his reduce, reuse, repeat soiree. So we had our schedule through June, and June was to be the water presentation. So I was wondering, anybody had any ideas, or Alex have an idea if we could plug you in, say July, or anybody have any other ideas before we move on?
I thought we thought about having Alex come in June and then do the water in July, when it's going to be more of an issue for folks.
That's right. You did mention that, Greg. Yeah. I mean, I have no problem with that. Sounds reasonable to me. We're trying to keep things somewhat seasonal in our presentations here. Alex, can you do June?
I would think so. I'm just checking my calendar right now. I mean, it's my grandma's birthday in Florida on the 29th, but yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
I'm not traveling down to Florida for grandma's birthday. So yeah, I'm sure it would work.
Okay.
And I apologize again for having to reschedule. That was a tough time, but I am excited for it. It's a presentation that we don't really typically do at the county, of trying to tie it all in together and really kind of make people think about climate first rather than obsessing over recycling the whole time.
Alex, can I pause you right there? Brenna Kim is trying to get on. She told me she's on, but she doesn't see herself. I see one attendee down there at the bottom of the list. There she comes. Okay. See her name. That's a good start. Right. So, Alex and Jim, you're scheduled. Okay. And that's for sure. Okay. And I was wondering on the subject, I wonder if Kim can hear us. Anyway, on the subject of our education series, we've got half a year to go. There she is.
Hi, Kim.
There's Kim. When would you like to be thinking about or planning some additional workshops? And I know we had talked about the neighborhood resilience team possibility. And I don't know, Greg, you and Mike, I think, had discussed that as far as how far out we want to wait, if we want to do that in person.
I think, wasn't that going to be scheduled for April, Terry? And then we were talking about doing kind of a longer presentation about climate change that would take potentially, multiple sessions, multiple workshops,
Right.
and ideally in person.
Yeah, the April it was kind of an introduction to the resilience teams.
Yeah.
The ones you were talking about were the ones I was thinking about, the climate in person. And you indicated that those would probably be better when we can do them in person.
That was my sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Mostly because what I've got in mind is a lot of small breakouts, conversations, kind of that would be kind of sparked by short films. I have a feeling that just trying to orchestrate it all online would be beyond my capabilities.
Okay, sounds reasonable. Did anybody have any other topics that potentially we could do come summer? If we wanted to do any more in summer, we're doing the water in July, we've got August, September, and on.
Toward the end of the summer, maybe even into early fall, we might consider something about like food preservation for people who are growing things in their gardens at home.
Fruit preservation, did you say, or food preservation?
Food preservation,
Food
canning,
preservation, okay.
pickling, all that kind of thing. I know we always end up with way more than we can possibly eat out of our garden, and that knowing a bit more about how to actually utilize that and store it appropriately would be beneficial to us.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good idea.
What
I
about,
wonder, Mike, whether that could be
Sorry.
combined maybe with something about gleaning. Like there's a Portland Gleaners organization that goes around picking fruit from trees that would otherwise, the fruit would not be used, and just raising that as an idea and then kind of linking that to food preservation as well.
Yeah. Good. So they're good ideas.
what
Any
about
others,
xeriscaping? That's where there's landscaping with the goal of no irrigation. I don't know what the interest might be. What are you guys' thoughts?
Seems like that would be a good one to include with the whole issue of water, like in the
Right.
July session. Yeah.
Okay.
Just give people alternatives.
It's a good fit. Yeah.
I was going to add that related to so this goes back to maybe 2015, 2016, 2017, something like that. But the SAB did do have a presentation with the Portland Fruit Tree Project, who basically came in and said, this is what we do. these are things that we ran into. If you want to go for it yourself, have at it. We've told you everything we know. Was kind of the way it went. There wasn't a ton of traction. There was a Facebook group that was started and then instantly did nothing related to that. It's a totally, I mean, like you can just go for a walk and see apples just rotting. I mean, there's tons of fruit, and the way that they run the program in Portland is really good. It never got traction back then. Maybe it could, it's been a number of years.
Right. I know that in our neighborhood, Jody Carson has a couple of apple trees that I've been gathering apples there and figs from her yard. Other neighbors have been too for years. And so, really seeing it as a neighborhood by neighborhood thing, and perhaps, just raising it as an issue to neighborhood associations as something that they might want to just see, like whether there are any people in their neighborhoods who are interested in inviting people in to use that fruit.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's almost like a neighborhood inventory of who's got what.
Right.
Yeah, Victoria. Victoria, go ahead.
One other aspect of that is if there's extra food, trying to give it to the food bank.
That's actually what I did with the apples that I picked at the
Nice.
place. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, any other ideas? Kind of brainstorming here about ideas for other education series sessions?
Well, I'm really interested in what Mike has been saying about alternatives to concrete, and wondering, whether that's something that you'll be looking into more deeply in your graduate studies, and whether that might be something that would be valuable to share, and just kind of think about, codes that could potentially be introduced that would relate to the use of carbon-intensive building materials.
Yeah, I'm hoping that something along those lines will get covered throughout the course of my studies. I know it won't be this semester, but along the way, hopefully that'll pop up.
Debbie.
I was on the Nextdoor site. This is maybe about a few weeks back, and there were people in the community that had posed questions about solar panels. They were talking about the pros, cons, etc. So maybe there might be community interest in having a class on solar panels.
Yeah, we've got one for May, Electric Future, and the details and the presenter haven't been determined yet for that, but that would be a good topic for sure. There are enough companies out there trying to get business, Yeah, Debbie.
Has there been like a survey in terms of what the interest is for community members, what topics that they might want to hear about?
No official survey. That was, I think, one of the things we had mentioned in a previous meeting, just to getting ideas. I put the word out in the last article I did, but Brenna is, what's the capability of the city for doing some kind of survey like that?
Let me ask Dylan, who's our assistant to the city manager, what we can do regarding that. I think it might be as simple as, sending out a blurb in the city's newsletter, but I don't know what the reach rate would be for that. I mean, it's simple, but I don't know if it's, only a couple hundred people, if it's going to be worth it. But we could also potentially create some posts on social media that would drive people to a survey link as well. So we have some options, and it may be worth reaching back out to our participants as well, surveying them to see, we realize you attended a workshop in the past, like, please let us know if you have any other interests, and then we could give them some, either we would want to set up, I guess, some pre-scripted topics, or we could leave it open to have people just write in their own. It would be up to how you would like the information to come in.
Right. So we have access to all the attendees through the library. Do they have that information then? Okay, good.
And Alex, just giving your experiences, were there some topics that seem to attract more people than others?
That's a good question. I think recycling tends to be pretty popular, probably more popular than it kind of
Deserves.
maybe should be. There are, there are also presentations on just kind of food waste prevention
Mhm.
practices and strategies. So there's the program in the region. Food waste. Wait, what? Because when you're in government, there's so many different programs. I believe the residential one is Food Waste Stops With Me.
Mhm.
That might be the commercial one, I'm blanking. But either way, it's a program in which basically people just pledge to try to do things that are just proven to reduce food waste at home.
Mhm.
And there are presentations on that can be pretty popular. I know that when we did a series 2 or 3 years ago, I'm trying to think when I think it was 3 years ago, there was one on kind of like the basics of climate science. And
Mhm.
that one was poorly attended. And that was one that we had anticipated that people were going to be like, we're primed. We really want to hear about this. And it was, it was not good.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was wondering about raised bed gardens or little intensive gardens, the possibility of having a multiple part. Now, this would be when we can get back together in person. But have a location, maybe someone volunteers their yard, they want to build a raised bed garden, and have a little series of in-person workshops on just how to do that and actually build a couple of raised beds or two and fill it with goodies. Since we're really trying to get into the resilience thing, it's kind of like the habitat building a house hither and yon is building a raised bed garden for somebody around the neighborhood. So that was just a thought.
Victoria has a question.
Go for it.
I did get a speaker in March for urban gardening.
Mm-hmm.
And she will be doing container gardening, focusing on that. Got her through Master Gardeners. That would be a point where we could say that in the future we're going to do more on raised bed gardening. And I'm going to mention the community garden, but the focus will be on her doing container gardening. I don't know what the term urban garden means actually. Urban gardening. What does that really mean? Just cramped space?
Small spaces.
Well, Detroit is urban gardening. There's huge amounts of gardens in Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit. That's not,
No, it's impressive. I've seen those gardens, and it's really part of the whole revitalization of Detroit is tied into the gardening that's going on there.
Oh, that's
But
wonderful, Greg.
I would assume. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, with regard to gardening, like I'm trying to garden all year long, and I would really be interested in knowing more about how to do that effectively, because I'm just kind of messing around. And I've got like chard and beets and kale and lettuce and spinach, going for most of the year. But it would be nice to know, sometimes it's really productive. This year it's lousy. So I'd like to know more about how to actually do that effectively from a master gardener. Might be something worth exploring too.
Yeah. I have some ideas which I can share with you later.
Okay. Debbie.
Any interest in rainwater harvesting?
Yeah, that could be something we could get covered in the July event, the water conservation. That would be great. Well, we got some good ideas here. Would you like to just kind of cogitate on these ideas on your own and see which ones are hot to you, and maybe get back next time and try to thrash out a couple more or dates? Okay. So we know we got through July with water harvesting. So if we want to do it the rest of the year, we got what, 5 more months. Victoria.
Question, which is, take a summer break when people are off busy doing other things, possibly.
We had talked about that. So
Yeah, I know we'd mentioned it, but I don't know if we'd.
yeah.
So that would mean at this point, maybe July, but maybe certainly August and September.
Mhm.
That's just for us to consider when we're scheduling.
Okay. Mike.
We might consider checking with the library to see if they show a similar drop off in program attendance during the summer. Like more than any other organization in our community, they put on programs for the public, and they'll probably have a better sense of whether attendance, is likely to drop off during that time period, and if it might be beneficial to put these sessions off for a month or two. However long.
It's a good idea. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on our education seminars? How many are kind of leaning towards backing off for a couple months in the summer? Just feelings. Yeah, kind of seems like almost a consensus there. All right.
If it were August and September, I think.
Yep. It'd be August and September we'd be off.
Yeah.
So, okay, we don't have to finalize that decision right now, but we should probably come to that conclusion next meeting, along with ideas. If we do not have seminars in August and September, then we got 3 more months to look at for the remainder of the year. So we got some good ideas already up there. So let's think about those. And any other thing regarding that topic before we move on? Okay. Sounds great. We're getting close to you, Alex. Again.
I was wondering if I could go next, because
Yeah, that's what I said. We're getting close to you.
Because
Yeah.
I hear a lot of chaos upstairs.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Alex was gonna talk to us about the compostable materials and food waste in the yard debris collection. So the possibilities of that, et cetera. So take it away, Alex.
Yeah, thanks for letting me join. Just some background for folks who don't know me. My wife and I served on the SAB for a number of years. I work for Clackamas County Sustainability Program as a sustainability analyst. Most of my work is with businesses and workplaces. But anyway, the office that I work for, we advise residents, businesses, and also cities on kind of setting up recycling programs and composting programs and things like that. So back in 2016, there was a lot of community interest that was just kind of generated from, I want to say, from posting online originally on Nextdoor and stuff like that, just to see if there was interest from the public on curbside composting. And it kind of brought up what you would expect to see, of a lot of people being for it, some people being against it, stuff like that. But the SAB back then decided that we wanted to investigate it. And I don't recall if this is maybe something for you all to figure out, or I don't know if we got approval from either the city manager or the council to kind of start the process of investigating it more formally. And I'll explain kind of what goes into that. But that's probably something just to kind of check with maybe Jerry, I don't know, about, like, do you need just like the green light? Because to investigate it properly does take time on the part of the hauler and the county and the city to kind of calculate costs. And that is there's a cost to calculate that stuff. So you might just want to see if it's something that you can go ahead and look into. But if it is, then the city would probably turn around and then talk to our office at Clackamas County. What's that? What was that, Brenna?
Yeah, so I actually received an inquiry this week and I forwarded it to our Public Works team. Since they kind of have the relationship or manage the relationship with the waste hauler, and our Public Works Director, Lance, let me know that he had recalled the study that the SAB had done or asked the staff to look into. And basically, what he advised is that there's only, I think he said, one or two sites that collect compost in the state. It's down in Southern Oregon. And essentially, so that means that we can't use the current metro site that our waste is collected at, which is going to be more expensive and then also actually less sustainable for the diesel trucks to haul the compost material to the state, is what he. So I think, I don't know if things regarding options have changed since the last 6 years, but that's where the study findings were kind of at in the last.
Sort of. Yes and no.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they showed, and also kind of not what they showed. But nothing really has. I mean, the things that have changed since then. I mean, for one, obviously, Westland Refusing Recycling, that was previously owned by Kahoot, was bought out by Waste Connections. But Waste Connections is a garbage collector that operates throughout the region and already collects compost elsewhere. So back when in 2016, and this is something that the collector would have to still figure out, and we're kind of, I mean, maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but right now our yard debris that is picked up, so their trucks that are collecting yard debris are probably starting, because they service a few different areas in our region, so they're probably starting out in like the Sandy area, coming down to hitting up a small portion of Milwaukee, and then Westland, and then to Canby, and then they're bringing it to Canby Landscape in Canby. That facility is permitted to take that type of material, which is yard debris only. So depending on what is in the cart determines what kind of facility it has to go to. Because if there's food waste in it, then now it becomes putrescible waste, and then it has to go to a different facility. So what they basically calculated was they looked at either bringing it to. So basically, if they were to start collecting food scraps now, they would bring it to one of two places. One is their trucks would collect it and then bring it to a facility called WRI, which is short for Willamette Resources. So basically, it's a site that Republic Services, another garbage collector, has in industrial Wilsonville, kind of just off I-5. And then from there, then it would get trucked down to their facility called PRC, which is further out of the region. It's not in Southern Oregon, but I do have a map. It's south of Salem. That's the farthest that it would go. So at the time, the collector Kahoot determined that that was the most economical thing to do, was to basically, instead of bringing that material to Canby Landscape, is that they would bring it to WRI, pay a different fee to Republic, and then have Republic haul it to their facility to actually turn it into compost. That's option number one. Option number two is to bring it to a metro facility, either Metro Central in Northwest or potentially Metro South in Oregon City, if things change there, but unlikely. And then from there, they would pay the metro garbage or the metro rate for that material, and then that would go to a facility in North Plains, I mean, like the Hillsborough area,
Right.
called Nature's Needs, that Terry, you and I toured when we were doing Master Recycler, that it would go there. It doesn't really leave, so it doesn't go to Southern Oregon. It doesn't really leave the region. I mean, City of Lake Oswego is doing it. City of Milwaukee is doing it. The bigger that was an issue about where it was going to go and how far it was going to truck, and the fact that these trucks are basically going one way to this facility down past Salem. The only difference is that Republic is already going there. I mean, they're already bringing food, like yard or debris like this, a mix of food and yard debris from city of Lake Oswego down and Wilsonville down there, and from places like in Portland and the Moda Center and stuff like that. So they're already kind of running their trucks down there. I totally jumped ahead because of the question about because of the comment from Lance. The realistically, we calculate, you know, like as a part of looking at stuff, they calculate out how far something is traveling. They calculate whether a facility has methane capture and the greenhouse gas, you know, impacts. The bigger hang up back then and why it was killed by the council, this is a totally different council, is that it was going to add between $2.66, depending on which way they went with, either $2.66 or $2.78, I want to say, a month, to everyone's garbage bill. Now that's 2016 numbers. It could be, I don't know, $3 now, but that was something that they did not want to do. They did not want to raise people's garbage rates to have that. That was what really killed it, was the additional cost. Now, realistically, in a perfect world, if you could get people to compost in their backyard instead of putting it into their curbside bin, that is technically, from a carbon standpoint, a better thing, to use it right where you're making it. But for a lot of people, that's just not feasible. And so curbside composting, it is even in our system, it is, or especially in our system, but even elsewhere, from a carbon perspective, it's good. Like, it does make a difference. It makes nothing, not even close, compared to things like energy efficiency or preventing food waste or plant-based food options or 50 other things according to research. Like, it is, as far as like, whoa, like this is going to be a really big win for climate. Maybe, probably not. It'll be good. It's not going to be a negative. And the questions kind of come back to, you know, for the cost that you're paying, if you're paying an extra 30 something bucks a year for the service, you know, is it worth it? And generally speaking, yes, it is, but people don't like that. But as far as people talking about like the it being shipped out of the region, that's not exactly accurate. Just go. Yeah, talk.
Go ahead.
Whoever.
Oh, so just to kind of to make sure that I'm understanding you clearly, Alex. So
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I jumped
no.
everywhere.
So based on the impact studies, what you're saying is that the composting is not going to be a net impact on the environment, like what Lance was suggesting.
It's not a negative. So one of the concerns.
The total. I mean, I know there's all these various factors, you know, the transportation, et cetera, but
Yeah,
you're saying that Lake Oswego, but I'm sure they looked at the studies and it probably came out to be a positive gain in terms of environmental issues to do their curbside composting. But and
yes.
just clarify if I'm understanding correctly. So Westland has made the decision not to do curbside compost because of the dollar cost, not so much looking at the cost to the environment. Is that what I'm hearing?
That was the sort of, yes. I mean, mostly yes. I mean, there's a lot of other things that go into the decision to offer a service or not than just the cost. Just when we had researched it before and had the collector present to city council, and I have the presentation, I have the slides in which they break down the calculations of cost, because if you're putting food waste in your yard debris bin, then you're sending less waste to the landfill. And so there were some adjustments on their expectation of, okay, we're gonna be spending less on trash, but we're gonna be spending more to send our trucks further to deal with this material. So there was probably a number of reasons that it's not offered. Realistically, back then the collector was fine to offer it. That's not going to be a hang up. The collector now, I mean, realistically it's the same. It's generally the same people who are running the company. It's the same equipment, it's the same routes. But the company that now owns Westland Reviews and Recycling does it elsewhere. So I'm sure they would say, yeah, if you guys want to, we can do it, and it will cost this much. And then it would entail updating the franchise agreement between the city and them to reflect that. And it would be increased costs for residents.
Do you know, Alex, what's the percentage of the total waste stream? What percentage of that is compostable stuff? Do we know?
Yes. So there are studies out there. We fortunately live in a state that knows a lot about its garbage and recycling and composting. I'd have to pull up specific numbers because what I found was it wasn't accurate enough to. I can find that information on the residential side. What I had pulled up was for everything, but that includes commercial, that includes construction and demolition. It includes a bunch of other stuff. I want to say that it's around. I don't even want to go off the top of my head. 20-ish% maybe, for residents, but I would want to give you a much more exact number because there are studies done by Metro about that get very accurate.
I
What
guess
do commercial? I mean, because I know the grocery stores, restaurants, they have a lot of compostable waste stuff. Because my family had a restaurant, and so huge amount. And then I know like grocery stores, my gosh, there's a lot.
Yeah, and realistically, that material is a higher value from a carbon perspective than the residential side. So in our region, food waste that is collected from businesses usually is used to generate alternative energy.
Oh.
At the moment, one facility that handled it was bought out by Shell and then instantly closed. And then the final version of what we're working towards is not ready yet. So right now, anyway, food waste collected from businesses currently is being used to make actual compost like curbside composting is. But usually it's not used for that purpose, and it's used to generate alternative energy through either an anaerobic digester or through anaerobic digestion, just through different couple types of systems. And
do they use that methane for energy? Is that's produced? Is that
yeah, and businesses in the metro region, food businesses are going to be required to compost. It was supposed to have started a couple years ago, but then COVID hit. So now starting a year from now, and then phasing in beyond that, if there's a food business that generates X amount of food waste, which is not a whole lot, then they have to compost. And then further down the road, all food to the landfill is going to be banned as well. I mean, this service is going to be offered in Westland at some point. It's just kind of a question of when everybody's going to have it. It's just a question of kind of when do you do it.
Okay, Alex, I think probably what we're going to be interested in is if we are going to present something like this to the city council, we're going to probably have to have a few facts, but I'm wondering, and Brenna, maybe you can help. We'd probably need to find out, okay, if this happens, how much extra is it going to cost, to do this for the average homeowner? I'm sure we need to know that. Or is that something the city could find out, Brenna?
Yes, I think that's something the city would have to take on in regards to the relationship and the overall franchise agreement that we have for the community. That would be something we would need to pursue so we could present back to this group and council and figure out how we move forward.
Yeah. Could I build on that a little bit, or I see hands too?
Then Victoria.
So essentially, they would be working with the county and the collector to kind of calculate that stuff, because the county has a lot of information on environmental impacts, and also just, there are, and the cost calculations and things like that. They would probably be working with the county and the collector. And that's why one thing I was saying earlier on is just to make sure that the SAB isn't, you know, kind of like not overstepping, but, you know, investigating something and spending dollars without some sort of green light to look into it. I don't know if you should talk with Jerry or just kind of like ask, is it cool to look into this? Because ultimately what the city would do would be to ask the collector to, yes, please go ahead and calculate the costs for this, and then they'd be talking with the county. And there are costs to doing that.
Victoria, you had a question?
Yeah, this is very interesting. One of the questions I think that I would have out there in the future for looking at how much this would cost for citizens is whether or not there would be something you can opt in for with an additional cost, or if everybody's rates go up, whether you use that or not, for those who do their own composting, and for people who just don't care.
Yeah, most people don't care. Well, I shouldn't say that. A very large number of people don't care. Realistically, the only way that it would work is if it was bundled in a service that you get, just like you have your curbside mixed recycling and glass recycling, and you already have your yard debris cart. You know, like you couldn't tell Westland right now, don't charge me for recycling. Like that you don't get to decide that. That would be the same thing where in this, everybody would be paying. The only thing, one thing that city of Lake Oswego did, and was included as a pricing option presented back in 2016, was there is an option for residents to have a 20-gallon trash can, and there was an option for those customers to not have their rates go up, in theory, to incentivize people to really use their yard debris cart and their recycling bin and use less garbage service. Realistically, I think people are kind of, they know what their cart, unless there's somebody who just is really nervous about running out of room, they probably are not going to have enough of a difference to go down.
Hey, oh, Greg, you had a question?
Yeah, my recollection is that Portland has been doing curbside kind of composting for a number of years now. And so I'm curious about the data that's available from Portland in terms of, you know, giving us an idea about the effectiveness of the program as well as the costs, and whether that's something that could be presented to the city council in West Linn. It really feels like, you know, something that ought to be done and is being done in many places. And we're kind of retrograde in terms of not doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the information of, I mean, you can find it's government stuff. Like there's a lot of transparency around garbage and recycling and franchise agreements and government. I mean, and so there's a lot of information out there about, you know, again, it's offered in Milwaukee, Lake Oswego, Portland. There's other places around the region. I mean, Beaverton. There's other places that do it. It's definitely not. It's not that crazy of a thing. It's just, you know, if you want to go for it, you're going to get a lot of people who are going to be very annoyed that their garbage rates are going up. That's going to be the biggest thing. And then there's going to be people who say things like it attracts pests, and it doesn't any more than their garbage already does. You know, there's some concerns that you can educate through, and there's some concerns that it's going to be just a difference of opinion with people. And ultimately, it's really up to the council. Because you can come up with the most foolproof plan for it, and they can still vote no.
Okay, Mike, you had a question?
Yeah,
For now,
I'm just
anyway.
curious, in your calculations of the climate impact, what was the baseline assumption for what people are doing with their food? I know there's methane emissions associated with dumping food in your garbage and letting it decompose anaerobically in landfill. Is that the baseline that was used in the calculations?
For which part of it exactly? You mean compared to the climate benefit of using it for?
Yeah.
I mean,
so comparing the climate benefit of a curbside composting program in comparison to what specifically was the baseline?
compared to what we do with it currently, which is just send it all to the landfill. So the landfill that our waste goes to does have methane capture. It's not at all like comprehensive, but it does have methane capture, but it doesn't come close to capturing. You know, it's one of those things where realistically we work with businesses to get them to compost their residents, or cities that set up stuff for residential composting. Food waste sent to the landfill is a big source of emissions. Uh, Going back to concrete, I believe concrete is a much more significant source of carbon emissions than food rotting in landfills. So it is one of those things in which, like, if you want to make the climate argument, okay, it's real, but it definitely is not a home run like food waste prevention is. I mean, food waste prevention is absolutely the best thing that residents can be doing for their own, to reduce their own climate impact. That plant-based diets, choosing alternative energy. I mean, those are kind of like the things that, you know, you would want people to be a little more gung-ho about than curbside composting. But, you know, I mean, people get obsessive about things that, I don't know. Anyway.
Okay, well,
I've gone on a long time, so I need,
okay.
you should kick me out now.
Okay, we will. I can see this is, I appreciate the good information, Alex. This is something we need to mull over and see how we want to present to council. So was there anything else regarding this topic any of you had to say or add?
One thing I would just say, but whatever you decide, just let me know. I would say, I mean, like with Brenna or whomever, like just basically figure out, just make sure that you're not going to get your hand slapped for going into something or spending people's time, that you're get the green light to look into it. And then, you know, like once, let me know when or if you get that green light, because realistically, then I'll talk to my coworker, Rick Winterhalter, who will talk with the collector to calculate that stuff out.
I would like to add something before you go, Alex. Thank you so much for going deep on the subject. Two things. One is that we're at a point where we have much better odds of it's much more viable to do now because of our neighboring cities doing it as well. And the other is really to change what our default settings are, because you make excellent points in that, yeah, I mean, like the biggest CO2 emissions are transportation and energy. I mean, those are huge. So all these things that we're talking about seem to pale in comparison. However, it's also part of our nature of, well, let's just keep doing things the way that's easy for us and that's known. So, you know, like this could be a very good time. So even if it's making as big a difference as other things, it is making a difference and we can do better.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, to be clear, because maybe I've poo-pooed it a little too much, our Office of Sustainability at Clackamas County would love to see City of West Linn do it and wants to help cities set this stuff up. It's something that we would love to see everywhere, except for where it's really not viable, like in the distant rural of Clackamas County, where they should just have a backyard pit anyway. But one quick thing, so sorry for all the time. When it got shot down, then city council pivoted back then to, well, let's try to incentivize backyard composting, because if that's really the best thing that people could all do, let's try to incentivize that. That also kind of went nowhere. So we looked into researching, would there be a way to get some of Metro's discounted compost bins for backyards somewhere closer besides having to drive to North Portland? We looked into ways to basically try to incentivize backyard composting, and I spent a lot of time on that too. And there was nothing, I would say there's nothing super viable other than people just either buying or making their own.
Terry, you're muted.
Hey, thanks. I've been typing away. Sorry. Really appreciate the time, Alex. Wondered if anybody else has anything else before we jump to the next topic.
Just a quick question that Alex could answer by email if you want to. Like, which cities in the urban area in Clackamas County are not doing curbside composting? But you don't have to answer now. You could, just unless you.
No, it's pretty straight. I mean, Oregon City, West Linn, Gladstone. I mean, there are. I mean, there are the one. I can tell you, the ones that are doing it are Lake Oswego, Milwaukee, and I believe now maybe Wilsonville or part of Wilsonville. I'm not positive about that actually. That's it.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. Well, Alex, really appreciate your time, and also looking forward to seeing your dog and pony show in June. So,
It'll be more organized than this.
okay,
But you
great.
know what? I got kids. So
Yes, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Alex.
Bye everyone. Thanks for the time.
See ya. Okay,
So Terry, I just have a quick question. Just getting a sense from the group. I get like, would we essentially want to vote if this is something that the group feels very passionate about, making it one of its goals for 2022, or like how are you envisioning this sort of process working out?
well, I had personally thought that this was an issue that we would like to press with the city this year, but that's just my personal feelings. I know we had broached this subject before, but other comments from other folks? Debbie?
Before we make the decision regarding recommendation, maybe we should get a little bit more data, in terms of the environmental impact of the composting, a little bit more detailed stuff. And I don't know if maybe we can borrow some of the data from Lake Oswego, because they're kind of similar size, a little bit larger, to see if if it makes sense for us. And I don't know if in terms of this cost thing, if there's any opportunity for us to partner with maybe even Lake Oswego or Milwaukee for the curbside pickup, to see if maybe we can share some kind of service or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there.
Doesn't work that way, unfortunately, because it is tied specifically to the address in which it's being collected by that hauler. So yeah,
I would agree with Debbie, just in terms of seeing it as something that we want to investigate, and then once we've studied a little bit more, make a decision about whether it's one of the goals we want to present.
Okay, any other thoughts on that? Some good ideas?
I'm with Debbie on the low hanging fruit. If there's a way with it, we can get easy information. And I'm sorry, I tried my best to get onto this meeting in the beginning, so I'm sorry for the new people of not being able to introduce myself. I'm Kim Bria, co-chair with Terry. But for the people that are new, we have a very robust docket of things to work on this year. We did a presentation to council, which will be coming up on our community development code update. So this could be something we work on, but the things that we may be working on may take us the rest of the year. So I think it's definitely worth a conversation. But if there's an easy button, we've got 3 other neighboring cities doing it. It shouldn't be that difficult to say, hey, how's this working for you? And what is kind of an overall cursory cost without doing a deep dive, because it's already happening.
Mike?
I think that this could be seen as kind of like a very visible win, if you will, for the community. Like, hey, this is something our community is doing that we ought to be doing. There might be something behind just having everybody feel good about this being a new service that's offered in the community. Worth pushing for a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's probably, like Kim said, there's probably just a few things we need to know initially to see if this is something we want to work on. So therefore, who would like to work on that? And find out, okay, what are those things? The basic costs, what are some of the details? Is it worth approaching city council for? Anybody want to work on that? And
so I actually have some ins with our neighbors that I could literally just ask my former colleagues and things about this impact to see if they have any data that could measure, or even just understanding the cost increase when they rolled it out. So I don't know if someone wants to be my official cohort that holds me accountable and other things like that.
Okay, great. Well,
I'd be happy to help out with that.
okay.
And actually, I've got a question for Brenna. From what you said earlier, it would not be possible for West Linn, Gladstone, and Oregon City to collaborate on a project like this. Is that correct?
No, because the franchise agreement is with the city specifically.
Okay.
Just like I believe we probably have different ones for West Linn unincorporated. Clackamas County has their own versus we have our own for city limits. And even though it's the same like
Yeah.
official city. So yeah, it gets very technical.
And when you're looking at your cost savings, I don't know how many of you utilize the West Linn once a month garbage pickup, but I have the smallest garbage can they have.
Yep.
And I get once a month pickup, and I have the ability to get curbside every week on recycling and glass pickup. So that could be part of that incentive in the cost. So if your overall garbage cost goes up, but you're able to get it down to one can a month, that could be a cost savings for people because it takes some of that volume out.
Kim,
I
is that because you were grandfathered in? That's like what we do, but it's because we've been doing it for years. And my understanding is that if you were to kind of get the service now, you'd have to have weekly pickup.
So I have to be quiet about that? Okay, I won't tell anybody else.
But we're legit. We were grandfathered in, but I don't think if you joined the service now, you could do that. But
Right.
I'm wrong about that.
That's something we definitely need to find out about because we have the once a month pickup also. So we definitely need to find out for sure. Debbie.
How do we know how much the city is paying for landfill space? Because maybe that could reflect a decreased cost if we're doing the curbside composting, so there's gonna be less landfill stuff, and maybe the city will save money in that way. But I don't know how much money would be involved. Do you know anything about that, Brenna?
They're all questions above me, so outside of my job. I'm happy to ask them though to get a better understanding. It's just not something I'm familiar with.
I'm just trying to think of ways to make that argument for city council in terms of the economic piece, I guess.
Well, we thank goodness we're not to the point of presenting to city council yet. We need to get a little information. So and so Greg is going to work with Brenna on getting some basic facts together and see if we can report something next time.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right. Any last words on that? We got a few other things to cover here. Okay. Topic 7, the Community Development Code revision update. Well, the staff time was approved, but haven't heard anything. Brenna, do you know what has transpired on that, if anything? No, I haven't heard anything. Kim, I don't think you've heard anything, have you?
I haven't heard anything. And so when we did this presentation to council and they approved it, we also had a deadline of, I don't know if it was the end of March or mid-March, but we should be hearing back by March because this is what we're basing.
March. Yeah, March 22nd. March.
Thank you.
March. Mm-hmm.
This is what we're basing our goals on for the whole year is the information we get back from the staff on this CDC. So we'll be keeping it on the agenda, but anytime, I mean, just tell them, Brenna, now is good.
Yeah.
February is good.
That's goal number 1 in our report. So
it's goal 1.
Yeah. So yeah, we need to get some information on that.
Yeah. So do you know which staff are kind of assigned to trying to pull this together in terms of the CDCs? Is it Darren? Is it Chris? Who's responsible?
I don't, my understanding, or at least just putting pieces together would be that it would be possibly Darren, and then working with his counterparts, because that's who Terry and Kim met with, but I don't. I'll have to follow up with Jerry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, since there's no information on that, it'd be useless for us to try and cook some up right now, huh? So, so, yeah, we would be nice to find something out on that pretty soon, since we did a lot of work on pushing that through. But so we've got the baseline audits update. Anything to update on that, Brenna and, oh, I'm sorry, Victoria, I didn't see you.
Did you want to look at elimination of outdoor power equipment as part of number 6?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I blazed on by that. Yeah, we had brought that up before, and I think that was also in one of our goal number 4. City will continue to replace fleet vehicles, maintenance equipment, and power tools with available zero emissions products. I would imagine that's under the auspices of Lance. Brenna, do you know if there's an ongoing effort in that regard?
Yes, there is. The reason I was putting it here though on the schedule is more so for a residential type of program. If that was something we would be wanting the council to enact with some type of change, or potential partnership again with PGE if they have a similar program returning this year, where we can start phasing that out.
On a residential level, which is one thing we talked about before, yeah.
So that would mean battery powered leaf blowers.
Yeah. Victoria?
I've heard that the battery powered are even noisier than the others. Is that, anybody else know anything about that?
No, I've got a battery powered leaf blower, and it's pretty quiet, just a whine. And besides, there's no exhaust fumes.
Well, I know that bit. That's the important bit. Just going for the
It's
noisy.
not noisier, no.
Okay.
At least my experience are not.
I've heard some myself. They're not really too bad.
Yeah.
Definitely better than the gas powered ones.
So once again, would that be community development code revision? Question mark.
It could be, but I would see that getting a little more traction with incentives. I mean, because Brenna, like you brought up, I mean, the city of Milwaukee just did it last year where they had a trade-in, and I think that's a little more, incentivizing of, hey, bring us your old, sad, tired gas one, and here's a discount off of a new one. I mean, you could change the code. I don't know what the data is on the results with the incentives.
Maybe worth pursuing an incentive to see if there's actually interest there before we go start making changes and have community members get very upset. But that's something we could definitely bring up when we talk with our PGE person.
That might be the easiest way to get into it, right? Because they already did it in a neighboring city. And if people utilize the incentive, you've got instant data of who've used it.
Debbie.
Oh, sorry. I was just, and this kind of goes back to that community survey. It almost sounds like if we had like a sustainability survey, it can incorporate a lot of these topics we're talking about, like who would be willing to, turn in their gas powered equipment, who would be interested, what classes would you be interested in, who would be interested in curbside composting, all those kind of questions I think would be helpful for this committee, perhaps.
Okay. And Brennan, when you said see if there's interest locally, are you talking about interest with residents or interest in the city government?
You froze for me.
Yeah. So we're
Could you
talking.
repeat your question? Sorry.
Yeah. when you're talking about to see if there's interest locally, you're talking about interest on the part of residents or interest on the part of the city?
No, in regards to residents who would actually be taking part in this program.
Okay. Okay. Well, any other comments on that? I mean, is that obviously looks like we may need a little bit more information before we broach that subject with the city or the residents and or decide which way to attack it.
It seems like, again, that's a place where, talking with folks in Milwaukee about how it has rolled out would be informative. And, would probably be a good thing to do in terms of, being able to report back to a meeting next month as to what we've learned.
Well, possibly in your talks with Milwaukee regarding the food waste, you could pose a question about that topic. So once again, a little more information before we proceed on that. Question mark, he asked. Okay. Any other words on that before we jump back to the community development codes? Okay, well, we had kind of exhausted the development code topic and we're getting into the baseline audits update. Is there anything new in that realm, Brenna and or Mike?
There is. So this is a spreadsheet I received today from PGE regarding the electricity usage at each of the city's buildings. So you can see here, they're separated. Here's the police building for 2019, 2020, 2021 data. The adult community center, this is not my title for the record. The public works yard. That's where all of our trucks and the folks that work on like the streets, the water, etc. That's where they all work out of. City Hall, and then the library here. Interesting things we were kind of just looking over between 2019 and 2020 data. Some had a significant drop, some didn't, comparing year over year. And then, but what was really interesting to see, it was just kind of how quickly for this last year, we just sort of got back online and, got really close to approaching 2019 numbers, even though, we've had partial shutdowns. And then we've also had our heat, our year of heat with that heat dome in August of this year. So just some initial assessments that I was looking at we briefly went over this data. So just some things that kind of were pointed out to me. And then obviously, I think I've shared this in the past, but our biggest use of electricity at our facilities is for heating and cooling of the buildings, and specifically for our older buildings, which City Hall and the Public Works Yard are definitely on older systems.
City Hall is.
Yeah.
Very good. Well,
That data broken out by month?
Sorry, what was that, Mike?
Is the data broken out by month anywhere?
There is this data tab. It does go into month by month. It's basically just a spew of what was all tabled to calculate here. So I'm happy to share that with you all. This was the cleanest form I could get it in because I just got it about an hour before our meeting started. So I hadn't had time to clean it up yet.
yeah. Do you suppose the library dropped and did not pop back up? Do you think that's because it was closed for a while?
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of the past year is probably not an accurate reflection of a normal year.
Yeah, and even 2021 too is probably a little off. But regardless of that being off, it's still very close to
Yeah.
what was pre-COVID. So, yeah, there's just some interesting perspective there. And when we talk about needing to reduce consumption, we need to make some efforts in those regards to try.
Debbie.
Yes.
We know the reasons for why the energy use is increasing some and decreasing. I mean, are there any a result of certain efforts that that department did, like increased insulation or whatever, to try to figure out the reason behind the changes, so that maybe we could target certain actions to address situations where they've had an increase in energy use?
Yeah.
And then I guess my other, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Our facilities team is actually looking at that and then going through and making those adjustments. So for me, in my office now, I actually have a sensor that the lights will turn off if there's no movement after a certain time. So we're going around and trying to get those installed in all of the offices. So, and again, switching out bulbs and other types of things so that we're more efficient in our energy use. So they are definitely going through and making those adjustments and assessments. I don't necessarily know if we can track back to a date unless there's like a major installation of this new HVAC system or something like that, where we could say, okay, as of here, we expect a reduction because of this, and can really measure that data.
Is there for each department, is there a certain goal that they're supposed to achieve?
Not yet, it appears. Greg.
Go ahead.
Oh, my question was whether there have been efforts to decrease the temperature in winter and as well as increasing it at summer in terms of air conditioning. Just thinking about the cost of heating and like, are the buildings heated at 68 degrees now and lowered to around 80 degrees in the summer? Do you know, Brenna, just about what those standards are?
I don't. That's something I'd have to ask our facilities team about, because I do know, just based on the size of our building, we start our AC or heat earlier before people get in the building so that the temperature reaches and stabilizes, and then it goes back down or up. So I know that there's a sort of method to where we have ourselves at in regards to temperature and energy use, but I don't know what those are. I'm happy to ask though.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be hard to say, to answer your question too, Debbie. This is why how long have we been asking for a baseline energy audit? I mean, because you can't tell what you're saving, right? Like if you don't know where you started, you can't say we're going to save 20% energy because you don't know what that is. So this is significant. Thank you so much, Brenda, because it's like jazz hands. We've been waiting a long time for this. This is great because now we can talk to PGE because the Oregon Energy Trust does have programs like retro commissioning, which is specific to HVAC systems, and they can look at things as a system, and then we can prioritize those buildings that are the oldest. Because like I was at a presentation for I don't know, it was the City of Tigard Library, and they saved a crazy amount of money with a $2,000 investment in labor to do their own retro commissioning of their system, and they didn't have to do major changes to the system, but you have to know where you are to start with. So this is huge because we can start.
Mhm.
And then I guess the question for Brenda is, where can we go now with the Oregon Energy Trust? I mean, I know they work with PGE, but I think they have their own programs for the savings so that we can prioritize which buildings to do that with.
Yeah, Debbie.
Regarding the audits, do we do audits like water audit and waste audit, or is it just we're only doing energy right now?
No, I have shared the water usage as well.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, we looked at that previously, so that was done.
Could I? Where do we have record of that? Because I'd kind of like to look at that.
Yeah, I'm happy to send that back out to the group so that we have both. I don't know if in the past that information was ever posted with the meeting minutes from that specific meeting. So I'm happy to just put it all in this one right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a great start, Brian. I really appreciate that, as Kim said. So we can certainly use that as groundwork for Mike to work on his thesis.
Good work.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments on that? We've got about 5 minutes left here. We got staff liaison updates, so I don't want to bite it off, but any other comments or thoughts on that before we move on? Okay, again, Brenda, thanks. Oh, Debbie?
Yeah.
That's funny. So once Mike gets his degree, so is he committed to the next 20 years on this board after he gets done with his training?
I don't know if I can promise that. I'll
It's
plan to
just-
stick around though.
Yeah, he made the mistake of mentioning he loved to work with spreadsheets, so all right. Okay, well, Brenna, you've got the floor for a staff liaison update.
Yes, so the next item that I have is I have invited Shanna Brownstein, I believe is her last name, from PGE to participate in the February meeting to discuss, she's from PGE, sorry, to discuss some of the residential and commercial side of energy consumption in the city or city limits. And basically what we had kind of talked about was her sharing basically a baseline for residential participation in PGE programs. So we could get a sense of comparing across residential and commercial accounts, what the renewable participation looks like and other programs that PGE has in place for businesses and residential, because they're a little bit different, their programs. So that way we all have an understanding of where our community holistically is also where we sit, or sort of what we look like in regards to the community's energy consumption and renewable resources in that. And so that next item would be like sort of that impact of participation. And then we could be looking to see if there, because I don't really have any idea of how many Westland residents may be signed up for the 100% renewable program or not. So we're going to use that as kind of a baseline to gauge this group to see if it would be worth maybe starting a type of campaign or some other type of partnership to really sort of move the needle and drive more adoption. And then we also talked about the tool electrification exchange program, just again to gauge interest and see what that hosting a program of that type might look like for us to support with PGE helping to operate and facilitate. So that was kind of the sort of bullet list that I gave Shanna that I felt that this group might be interested in learning more about. If there's something else that you'd like me to have her come prepared to talk to us with, I'm happy to ask.
Yes.
That sounds good, Brennan. That could be kind of the main part of our February program. Do you have any idea how much time she would need to do that?
I would imagine maybe 15 minutes at the very most, depending on, discussion. I think basically the data is going to be very high level and kind of speak for itself.
Right.
So it was really just kind of more our conversation piece.
Okay, well, that would be great. So any comments about that? Let's
I just had a quick question.
yeah, Mike.
Do you know if any of the data that she'll be bringing with her will be made available to us directly, or is this more of a presentation she'll be giving?
That's something I can ask. I think it's probably going to be more presentation format rather than an Excel spreadsheet. That makes sense.
And
I have
I'm sorry.
I have a question, and it's not, I mean, it's topic with PGE, but when we had talked earlier about that clean wind program that we testified for, that we thought we were adopted into, and that it turns out we're not. are there opportunities for us, especially with our updated climate goals? I mean, I don't know where that broke down, but when you're talking to her, I mean, if you have any more information on that, that would definitely restore confidence in the programs that we think we're part of.
Yeah, so I do have an update. I haven't yet shared this information with Jerry. So I don't want to go too much into the weeds with it because I want to just get a better understanding from both him and Lance how we want to proceed. But essentially, the numbers that were shared with me is that the standard product that the city uses for renewables is 20% completely renewable. And then we signed up for the Green Futures Enterprise, which I believe was an additional 8% is what the metrics were showing me that we've used or we're going to use for completely renewable sources moving forward. And then there's which was that the wind portion that we increased our percentage or purchasing of. And then there's another program. I'm forgetting what it's Green Futures something, and the acronym is GFI. And that we have purchased for this year will be at 57%. So overall, the city's total renewable resources are 85% of our what do you call it? The mix in our utility is completely renewable sources. And then I also found, back to my notes here. In 2025, that 20% baseline is going to increase to 27%. And then in 2030, there will be an additional bump. So we'll be like organically increasing as we go along. But trying to offset that 85% was something that I wanted to speak with Jerry and Lance about to see if they're, number one, if we have the funding to afford purchasing more of this type of utility and where that might go to get us to 100%.
These are great numbers. I'm interested in the program that, had we been in it, would have saved us money by participating in it instead of having to pay more for this wind.
Yeah, so I think my understanding, and again, this is very limited because I'm just like on the periphery from PGE stuff. We have been paying for it. The reason was so we could have more of a renewable mix. And that was because it's before this program now where we're going to be at that 57% was available. So we were like on the very cusp of having more renewable product put into our utility. So that is my understanding, is that before this was more broadly available or accessible for us, we made this choice to purchase more. We have been receiving that. And then now that there's this other option to buy a more bulk, I guess you would call, of a guaranteed renewable source. This is where and this program is starting this year. So that's where we're sort of getting into.
Thank
So,
you.
Brenna, you said that this year we will be in total 85% renewable. And by 2025, that'll jump up to 92%.
An additional 7% if we stay exactly where we are right now. So what is that, 92?
92. Okay. Okay. Very good. Well, some good numbers to have.
Very encouraging.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Mary's not here, so agenda topic 10 kind of goes by the wayside, but anything else for the good of the cause before we adjourn? Great to see everybody. Victoria.
Are we supposed to get those notes too, Mary, somehow?
Uh-huh. And I don't know. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in executive session this evening, so
Mm.
she had a conflict.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a lot went on today, so does, got a couple of assignments, like Brenna, you're getting yourself into a lot of stuff here, you know?
I have my homework for sure.
Yeah, you do.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Greg will offer moral support.
I can also do some calling as well.
Okay, so we're gonna think about the end of the year seminars for next meeting and mull that over. And it sounds like we decided to hold off for August and September with the seminars, correct? And then next meeting, we'll try and fill in the blanks. Okay, very good. So anything else for the good of the cause, folks?